Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be thinking about adding elegance to a melodic line. Now, a lot of composers let me know that they're kind of reasonably happy coming up with a melody, but they sometimes feel it's a bit unexciting, it's sort of a bit stop go, it sort of somehow lacks something that would just kind of add a little bit of icing to the cake, as it were. Now, one very useful way of dealing with this is to think about incorporating appoggiaturas, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. And we're going to see three sort of slightly different ways of using an appoggiatura to just enliven a melodic line and to make it work with even more elegance. Now, it doesn't really matter what the style of your writing is, because appoggiaturas can be applied in any style. I'm kind of doing something in this video that's a little bit in a classical period style, a kind of Haydn, Mozart sort of style. But you can apply this in any other genre at all. What I love about these things sometimes is how I kind of explain something in one musical context and somebody does something with it in a totally different musical context, and then they write to me and say how it's liberated things for them. That's great, fantastic. Music is music, doesn't matter what the style is. Okay, now let's have a little look at this example that I've just put together. I've kind of just written a 4-bar thing here in a kind of classical period style, and it goes like this. Now you listen to that and you think, well, doesn't sound too bad, does it? I mean, what doesn't work about that? All the melody notes fit the chords. You can kind of feel where the tune is going. Yeah, it's okay, isn't it? But could it work even better? That's what we're going to explore in a moment. One of its difficulties is at the moment that most of the notes in the melody belong to the chords. They're essential notes or harmony notes or chord tones, however you know them. Because when I start at the beginning, I'm in the key of C major and I'm using chord 1. These notes belong to chord 1. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's absolutely fine. You can spin a melody just by kind of bouncing between the notes of the chord. When I get to this chord, this is chord 5-7 in its second inversion, and this note in the melody belongs to the chord. No problem at all. On we go. This is chord 5 in its first inversion. This note belongs to that. This is what we call a passing note or a passing tone. This note kind of makes it a 7th, so it turns that chord 5 into a 5-7. This note belongs to the chord 5. Then all of this belongs to chord 1, and so on. But maybe it's just a little bit plain. And also you have this sense of the music goes and then it stops. It goes, then it stops. It sort of goes and then it stops. So you sort of mean this sort of stop-go thing. And sometimes this is the fundamental difficulty that people have. It's kind of like I've got this 1-bar phrase, another 1-bar phrase, a 2-bar phrase. It sort of belongs to this 4-bar statement, but it breaks down in that sort of way. So what can we do? Well, appoggiaturas are the answer, or one of the possible answers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play the original thing that I've just played, and then I'm going to play a version of exactly the same piece of music that's got appoggiaturas in it, and we'll see what it sounds like first of all before we explore how to write them. So here's the original. Okay, here's the lower version. Now, hopefully you can hear and see that it's the same piece of music, but suddenly those elaborations kind of make it much more successful. It makes it feel more elegant, which is interesting. And it also just kind of mitigates this sort of stop-go thing a bit, doesn't it? And it makes the melody work rather better. So let's have a look at what we're talking about. So what's an appoggiatura? An appoggiatura is translated into English as leaning note. And an appoggiatura effectively takes half the value of itself and the note that follows. Let me explain that for a moment, because the first appoggiatura comes here. Now, this is elaborating this note. So this note has 2 beats. So what I do is I say, well, I'll have one of those beats on the appoggiatura and one of those beats on the note. So half the value has gone to the appoggiatura and the other half of the value is left to the note. So that this total appoggiatura situation is the same value as the note that we've decorated. Okay, now the point is we've decorated this note B, this one here. And we said earlier, didn't we, that B belongs to this chord. It's a dominant 7th chord, a 5/7 chord, and B belongs to it. Now you'll notice that C doesn't belong to it. So C is the appoggiatura, the leaning note, and the appoggiatura is dissonant with the chord. So that's an important thing. And that's why we lean on it, because it's a dissonance followed by a consonant. So if you listen to the impact of this first measure here, this first bar, can you hear that I'm leaning on this note? Because that's the appoggiatura and it's dissonant. It doesn't belong to this chord. It clashes with it, but it resolves by step onto a note that belongs to the chord. So you feel a kind of tension and then a release. So you always lean on an appoggiatura. This is a very important thing to realize if you're a performer. Spot where the appoggiaturas come so you can lean on the appoggiatura and step back onto the note that follows, because the note that follows resolves the dissonance of the appoggiatura. And when the appoggiatura goes onto its resolution, that's something we expect to happen by step. It's going to a neighbouring note. It's often going down, but it doesn't have to. It's going on to the neighbouring note. But you can see, you can kind of feel that tension of the appoggiatura, and you can see how it kind of sounds much more interesting than the rather more plain thing that we started with. So just looking at that first measure again, that first bar, the original, now the decorated version with the appoggiatura, you can hear the impact of that, can't you? Okay, well, in the second bar, I'm going to use another appoggiatura, because when we get here, this note is an appoggiatura, D sharp. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, you know, what on earth is going on now? Because if we're in the key of C major, D sharp isn't in the key of C major. You're absolutely right, it isn't. And also, I've purposely tried to include an appoggiatura here that resolves upwards by step. Having said that they often resolve downwards by step, it's perfectly possible that an appoggiatura can resolve upwards by step. But why is it a D sharp? This is what we call a chromatic appoggiatura. Okay, it's chromatic because it's using a note that doesn't belong to the key. So sometimes if you want to add even a bit more spice, a bit more colour to your music, you can say, well, I'm going to finish on E, and E belongs to this chord 1 in the key of C. And I could use a note that's 1 above the E or 1 below. So I could go F E, or I could go D E. But it could be even more juicy if I go D sharpy and make it a semitone instead of a tone, you know, a half step instead of a whole step. And you hear that's kind of a rather nice added colour and dissonance. And it flows on very nicely from the previous note, because we got chromatically from D to D sharp to E. So you see how that works? And then you see the impact of the first 2 measures, because the first bar ends with an appoggiatura resolving downwards. That's not chromatic. The second bar ends with an appoggiatura resolving upwards. That is chromatic. So you see how that works. Now, what have I done in the third bar? Well, I've got two appoggiaturas next door to each other. So you notice in the original we went from F to D. So there's the F, there's the D, which means that this is an appoggiatura and this is an appoggiatura. Okay, so instead of going, I'm using the note above each of those notes first. So here, dissonance, consonance, dissonance, consonance, leaning note, resolution, leaning note, resolution, appoggiatura, chord tone, appoggiatura, chord tone. So you see how that just adds another element to it. It makes the rhythm a little bit more lively, which is quite useful. And you feel this consonance, this dissonance, consonance, dissonance, consonance thing. So they're not chromatic. They're using notes that belong to the key of C major, but we've got two back to back. And you also notice that the rhythm is faster because here I'm using a pair of quavers, a pair of eighth notes, instead of these crotchets or quarter notes that we used in the first two bars, the first two measures. And then just at the end, you'll notice how in the original, we just finished on a chord 1 in C. And what I've done this time is to say, well, let's have a double appoggiatura. Ha-ha. So we've got one appoggiatura here, resolving upwards by a step. We've got one appoggiatura here, resolving downwards by a step. So instead of doing the original thing, which was this, I'm now doing this. So you get a double appoggiatura. Okay, now, one thing just to mop up about appoggiaturas, because I know some people will be thinking about this. There'll be some people out there who are sort of thinking, well, when is an appoggiatura, and when is an appoggiatura a suspension? Well, if you know about suspensions, you know suspensions have to be prepared. Then they have to be sounded, then they have to be resolved. P, so PSR, prepare, sound, resolve. P belongs to the chord that's sounding at the time. R belongs to the next chord. S is dissonant. So if you like, an appoggiatura is going SR. It's sounding, it's resolving. But an appoggiatura doesn't have to be prepared. So you notice in this case, D sharp is not prepared. This is going kind of S to R, but this is not P. So that's definitely a chromatic appoggiatura and can't be seen as a suspension. You could say it's a chromatic accented passing note because it's going by step between the D and the E, or an accented chromatic passing tone. So that's perfectly possible. You could look at this one and say that's definitely an appoggiatura because it's not prepared. It's not prepared on the note before. So it's kind of doing this sounding, resolving, but it's not prepared. So that's an appoggiatura. You could say, well, this is an appoggiatura because it's doing exactly the same as this, which is what we're talking about here. You could also say that this is an accented passing note because it's going by step between the F and the D, and it's coming on a beat. So it's an accented passing note or an accented passing tone. So notice what I'm getting to here is that sometimes an appoggiatura is an appoggiatura, you know, but sometimes it's could be something else. Like this could be this accented chromatic passing note. This one's definitely an appoggiatura, can't be anything else. This is definitely an appoggiatura, but it could be an accented passing note. When you come to this, you could say that this double appoggiatura in both parts has been prepared, because here the B is prepared, it's sounded, it's resolved. In the tenor part, the F is prepared, it's sounded, it's resolved. So you could say, well, this is a 4/3 suspension because it's prepared. This is a 7/8 suspension because it's prepared. and quite often 7/8 is combined with 4/3, so as a double suspension. Is it that we should see this as a double appoggiatura, or should we see it as a double suspension? The answer is you can see it as both. But the impact of it is exactly the impact of an appoggiatura, however you want to describe it. This one here is prepared on the second half of that beat, isn't it? Then it's sounded, then it's resolved. So sometimes the relationship between appoggiaturas and suspensions is quite close. But an appoggiatura is always an unprepared suspension, as it were, which is what this is. It's kind of going 9/8 above the bass and it's not prepared. That's definitely an appoggiatura. Often though, appoggiaturas always kind of could be described as suspensions only if they're prepared, or they might be described as passing notes, passing tones, if they're moving by step between the note before and the note after. So that hopefully just clears up a few things about those details of appoggiaturas. But does it add elegance to your line? I think it does. So if you're not used to using appoggiaturas and you're feeling that some of your melodies need a bit more elegance, a bit more movement, a bit more colour, well, this might be the way to do it. So you end up with this version with appoggiaturas. Well, I hope this video has been helpful to you, and if it has, you might want to go to the Music Matters website to see what else we can offer you, and there's a lot on offer to you. www.mmcourses.co.uk. Have a click on Maestros. You might be interested in becoming a Music Matters Maestro and joining our international community of musicians, which is really helpful in making you feel that you're not just out there on your own doing your own thing. You can connect with other people on a similar musical journey, and you can engage as much or as little as you want to. There are 3 levels of Maestro membership. One is basically a support level, helping us to keep producing all this material that we're putting on YouTube, and you get some benefits by being a level 1 member, so do have a look at that. If you want to have greater perks and you want to attend one of our monthly live streams, sign up to level 2, and you'll find in addition to everything else, you also have access to an hour of solid teaching every single month, running with a live chat so you can ask your questions, you can request topics that we would present in live streams, you can interact with other people. Some wonderful friendships are being formed across the world. It's lovely to see how musicians are connecting with each other and finding that absolutely wonderful. If you want to go to level 3, you have all the benefits of level 1 and level 2, but level 3 means you have an additional live stream access every month where you can submit your own work, your compositions, recordings of yourself performing, questions you want to really kind of dig into. So it's very much a kind of response to individuals, and we share that in the group so everybody can benefit. And again, a live chat is running. If you can't attend those live streams live, don't worry, they're all recorded. You can access them at any time. Also, while you're on the homepage, have a look at our courses. There's a little click on courses there where you can discover everything we're offering you for courses in theory, oral training, analysis, history of music, harmony, you name it, it's all there. And that might be something of great benefit to you. So have a look at the website, see what we can offer that's useful. www.mmcourses.co.uk.